This reinforces what I've been saying for fucking years. Camping fucking sucks.
But drugs are amazing.
If that doesn't describe our dichotomy in a nutshell, I don't know what does.
Yeah, okay, so we just saw Ben Wheatley's In the Earth, which we both went into basically completely blind. My only prerequisite is I've seen Sightseers and Kill List, so I'm somewhat familiar with Ben Wheatley's work, but you knew jack shit.
This is the movie you just texted me about, and just like, hey, do you want to watch this next Friday? I said, sure.
Sure, why not?
Sure.
So this is definitely like an indie foreign kind of film.
Like it's a slow week. Like we can watch whatever, and I want to watch like that fucking Thunderstruck movie that's on Netflix right now.
Thunder Force.
Thunder Force.
We can watch that after this.
Oh gosh.
It's Friday. You don't have to do anything in the morning.
I suppose. But it's I mean, Matt already volunteered for that, so like I'm gonna let him suffer through it.
I mean, okay, we'll figure something out. But anyway, so In the Earth is. I liked most of it. I enjoyed the slow burn of it.
I am honestly undecided on whether or not I like this movie.
The ending definitely put me more on the fence.
Like it wasn't even so much the ending, just like something with it wasn't clicking for me.
Okay.
Like it's visually interesting. That's undeniable.
Oh yeah. Fucking also warning. They put the warning on the movie too, but this movie will trigger an epileptic seizure if you have any kind of condition like that. Okay. Flashing lights, very abrupt stuff. If that kind of thing even gives you a headache, you might want to avoid this movie because it definitely utilizes that to disorient the viewer and the characters in the movie later in the movie in particular.
I like the visual elements. I thought the concept, at least the way they're describing, was at least interesting.
Yeah.
And I liked the acting, particularly in the part of Zach. Yeah. I thought he did. I really enjoyed his performance. Yeah. Without giving away who that is or what the context is.
I really I enjoyed this on a technical level very deeply.
It is very like there's a lot of technical aspects to appreciate. For me, it's like what I'm looking for in this kind of movie is like, did I connect with it emotionally? Did I get something out of it?
But I'm just saying, like, just to get this out of the way. From a technical perspective, it is impeccable. I had a little bit of a problem with how much of a shaky cam they used. Like, there were parts where it was just a bit much. It was clearly someone walking with the camera that was not in the movie, and it just it took me out of it a little bit. If you watch these, you know me. I like tripods and dolly shots and stuff like that. But it worked for most of the movie, and the technical elements are really great. Aside from being really well acted, immediately as soon as the movie started, where there's a shot of a hammer breaking a rock, there is a texture to the sensations of the film. This
movie does a really great sound design.
Yeah, it has incredible sound design. It utilizes the visuals very nicely. It does a really good job of zooming in really close on certain things that it wants you to focus on to establish the tone of the environment. And it does a really good job with that, especially when you get later in the movie and things start getting a little trippy. It does have one of the more... it doesn't go so much for conveying the feelings or portraying... Okay, it doesn't go so much for portraying the feelings of being disoriented and tripped out, so much as trying to disorient and trip you out directly. And it does a really interesting job of that. It takes a different approach to that from most that I've seen. I haven't seen A Field in England, which has Ben Wheatley's previous movie, but I heard that there were psychedelic style elements in there. I'm assuming that they were similar to what this is. So this is probably an expansion on that if you've seen that.
I have no opinion on that. I'm not too familiar with Ben Wheatley's filmography.
It's really interestingly edited. It's interestingly shot. Just the experience of watching the movie, like with your senses, is really cool.
Yeah, there are some great cinematography, of course, sound design, the 80s synth music. I always appreciate whenever that comes up.
I love the soundtrack very much. Of course, at the end I found out it's Clint fucking Mansell. most famous works would include the soundtrack for The Fountain and Requiem for a Dream.
Yes, okay.
So
I've seen one of those.
Massive heavy hitter, just amazing to hear him take on like that kind of synthy style soundtrack. And I thought it was really cool that, of course it ends up being one of my favorite dudes in the industry. It's I didn't even go into it being like, oh, it's Clint Mansell, I'm gonna like the soundtrack. I was like, I really fucking like this soundtrack. Oh, it's Clint Mansell. Like, I love it when that happens.
That's one of those cases you turn to me and go like, oh, that's Clint Mansell. I'm like, yeah.
No.
It's almost totally like know who that is.
When I really enjoyed the score for Ad Astra, even though I fucking hated that movie.
I remember.
I
one of top 5 rants right there.
Oh yeah, no, that's you want to see an angry review where I just tear a movie to pieces. Ad Astra. But I remember being really in love with the score, and I mentioned in the review. Later, I find out Max Richter, one of my favorite modern like neoclassical musicians, just fucking great. Anyway, Clint Mansell, great score, good stuff.
This is one of the movies I probably don't have a whole lot to say about because it's one of those weird trip movies I kind of watch. It's like, okay, it's interesting. There's a lot going on here, but I'm not really connecting with any of it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where kind of like that is for me. Like all technical stuff aside, like if I'm not connecting with it, all of those movies just do not matter to me.
It wasn't emotionally engaging, but I did find myself interested in the events that I was witnessing. I wanted to know what was happening.
Yeah.
So basically, if you don't know what this movie's about, this researcher goes out to this place and he's going there to go out to a research outpost in the woods, and it's like a 2-day walk. There's no other way to get to it. And he has to go by foot, and he goes with a ranger. And so it's just him and her, and they basically go off into the woods where there's a lot of unknown shit going on, and you have no idea what's in store for them, and it just gets kind of weirder and weirder, and you never really know if you can trust what's going on. There's this constant feeling of like vague paranoia, and when you get to the end of the movie, like it comes together in a weird way where it's
still kind of vague and paranoid.
it is kind of vague. I think I understand most of what happened, but it does do this thing. Ben Wheatley is not going to hold your hand. Ben Wheatley, I still remember my experience. Like Sightseers was interesting, but the ending was a little underwhelming. Kill List was a really engaging, intense experience, even if I didn't really connect with the characters, and has a sequence at the end where it's not like supernatural or something, but it feels nightmarish just because of what is happening. That involves 2 men being kind of pursued through a maze of like underground sewer tunnels. It's really harrowing, and that's one of the things that I remember the most. Also, the ending, which is really interestingly a parallel to a movie that I don't think it intended to be a parallel to. Maybe that movie ended up being a parallel to that or whatever, but like a Serbian film. So like very, very weird. Very weird.
You know more than I would. That's out of my ballpark.
Yeah. Just a very strange, almost exact same sort of ending, at least in basic concept and context of the films. So, anyway, I'm rambling about other Ben Wheatley movies. But basically, I just remember the ending of Sightseers being like, oh, that makes sense, and it's kind of fun, but like, well, fun, it's really dark. But I remember it being kind of just ending. And it's one of these things where Ben Wheatley's one of those directors where he wants to get you to a certain point and let you have an experience, and will just drop you off at the end of it, and doesn't really care about the denouement of a story. Like, you will get to the climax, and then it'll just be like, okay, there's no real
catharsis. There's no epilogue.
Yeah, there's no ending sequence where it wraps things up or explains anything or lets you follow up. He likes to just lead you to a moment and then
it's like the climax is done. Boom. Credits.
And then release you there. You know, yeah. So you might have a problem with that. You might not. In the context of this movie, I feel like it works.
And I feel like that's not really the issue, though, because like again, like the plot itself is not where it kind of loses my interest.
Yeah.
Is the fact that like the characters are fine, but there's nothing really there's no central hook that really makes me like. Sure, I'm interested in what's happening, but I'm not invested in what's happening. Like, if these characters died, it wouldn't necessarily bother me.
I feel like that's intentional.
Like, that can be intentional, fine. That doesn't make it engaging.
I found it engaging because
at least to me.
For me, I found it engaging because of the paranoia and uncertainty of what was happening. You were kind of like, I didn't really care if one or the other one died in the like perilous situations that they were in, but I was interested in finding out what was happening.
I can see that. Like, I will say I was interested too, but that interest did not compound the issues that were like really forcing me to like connect with it at a certain level.
It's also a pretty slow movie for long periods of it. So
like, I would say like movie. I know you haven't seen this one, but like I would say movie that kind of captures like the characters aren't the most interesting in the world, but the concept is interesting enough for me to be invested throughout. Is like Arrival would be a good example for me.
Okay.
And I know you haven't seen that one.
Yeah, kind of saving it.
So without giving much away, like even though the characters were the most gripping in the entire world, I can look at the concept and go like, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to learn more about this.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like where the threshold is. And this movie never quite reached that for me.
Okay.
If that clarifies my position a bit more.
I get it, and I guess I actually got interested enough in what was going on. It's a very simple concept. It is very much the idea of like, what is happening in the woods. And is it what, is it more of a rational explanation, or is it actually something weird and crazy like it kind of hints at potentially being? And
it definitely doesn't come to a concrete answer on that.
Oh yeah, it does.
Well, I guess
I would say so. I would absolutely say so.
Okay, fair enough.
It's pretty. There are several things throughout the film that make it very clear that what is happening.
But they also kind of provide like scientific explanations for that along the way as the movie goes on, so you can definitely like.
Well, I mean, if you want to spoil the ending right here, Michael, and have that conversation.
I haven't spoiled anything yet.
Yeah, you have. I said it's a clear ending, and you're like, well, there's a scientific explanation, so clearly.
Well, okay, fair enough. All right, fair enough.
I was gonna save that for spoiler territory.
Whatever. At this point, they're like.
No.
Okay, fine. Well.
Don't dismiss your viewers. But okay, so do you want to just like edit that out?
No, it's gonna be good.
Really? You want to leave the spoiler in?
I don't think like this is not even one that's gonna get a lot of views.
So what? The people who view it are gonna want to know.
Like people who have watched this view probably have already seen or know enough about the movie.
Or they just like our videos and they might be intrigued to watch it, and they might have gone and watched it and had a good experience, but then you spoil it because you don't care about your viewers, Michael.
Really? You're trying to guilt me about this shit.
I just think you should edit that out. If I was a viewer watching this trying to see if it was a good movie or not, and you said that, I would be a little annoyed.
I'm not gonna edit. It's fine.
Disappointed. So anyway, I guess we're going into spoiler talk. So,
see, now it's more just a spiteful thing.
Yeah, right.
Because just because you try to guilt me into it, now it's like, fuck you, no,
I'm trying to get you to think of the real things.
Oh, you're totally trying to guilt the fuck out of me.
Well, yes.
You literally did the guilt tone, too.
Yeah.
So,
because it's something to feel guilty about.
Fuck you and your manipulative bullshit. Just out of pure spite, I'm not going to edit now.
I'm just arguing my point, Michael.
See, you do that bullshit.
What?
You do the weepy voice.
I'm just saying, if I was a viewer and I was interested in this movie,
it's like, I'm just trying to help you, Michael.
I'm just trying to make it,
almost like trying
as
to hold back
someone who is not
tears.
jaded on this. So do you want to just jump into spoiler talk or not?
I mean, might as well now since we've hyped it up enough.
Jesus Christ. Okay. All right. So there's like. First off,
in my defense here.
Is this review just going to turn to us talking about
It wouldn't be the first time.
Oh my god. But I want to talk about this movie.
This last point I'm going to make and I'll drop it.
Oh my god.
So
you have to have the last word, huh, Michael?
Yes.
Okay.
It's my show, goddammit.
That's fair.
Why do you think I made a show about me? So I can have the last word on this
It's not about you, it's about movies.
But my name's on the title card. Yeah. Anywho. So in my defense, what I was trying to go with that is, we were saying like whether I had a definitive answer, whether it was like scientific or paranoia or spirit or supernatural, the case may be. And you're saying I thought a definitive answer. By that, I thought you were implying that it was strictly supernatural. The point I was trying to make is you can make a scientific argument out of that too. Still a vagueness to it. So it wasn't a spoiler. It was you can make up your own mind about it. Asshole. So that was my point I was trying to make there.
I disagree.
And that's fine. You're allowed to disagree.
I just don't think we should discuss the ending of a movie before we get to the spoiler
We
part.
didn't even say what the ending was.
It doesn't matter. We're debating what the ending is, and if we debate what the ending is before spoiler mark, it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're talking about the ending now.
You can still keep it in vague terms and still discuss it on that merit.
I hate it when a trailer has a shot from the last 10 minutes of the movie.
That's not even a shot from the last 10 minutes of the movie. That's just like a vague point about it.
I just don't like talking about it, Michael, okay? I'm very sensitive about spoilers.
Okay.
All right.
See, at least that makes more sense to me.
Yes! That's my whole point. I'm bleeding. Look, I'm so angry I'm bleeding.
Oh, Jesus, you okay?
No, it's fine. I just picked at this thing.
Okay.
I was cooking last week and I got a piece of oil that jumped on me and I just like...
I hate when that happens.
Scarred up. Yeah. But anyway. So, just, like... Okay, so they go to the woods. There's the intro act. There's the point where they meet this dude, Zach, who initially seems... kind of friendly, but I never fucking trusted that dude.
Oh yeah.
And then there's they get jumped by somebody.
Wait, so why were you mad about the science talk and when I brought up Zach halfway through the review so far?
Because he happens partway through the movie, and we just said his name.
Okay.
We're not debating whether he's real or not. Like, I mean, not that that's an argument.
I'm trying to find where the line is on the.
The line is don't talk about the ending until the spoiler mark, Michael. But so, Jesus Christ.
What the fuck was that?
They get jumped, they lose all their shit, people steal their shoes, clearly intentionally to get them to fuck their feet up because they're little booby traps hidden to cut people's feet up. And cut his foot up it does. Yeah. Michael's foot gets a gnarly gash on it. And they meet this dude Zach, who offers to give them shoes. He lives out in the not the reservation. It's not a wildlife reservation. It's like a big park.
It's basically like a park as far as I know.
Yeah, it's like a national park or something. Like it's restricted territory.
Big foresty area that's got like government mandated basically.
So they go with this guy, and of course he feeds them. He stitches up the thing, and he gives them some kind of like drink to try. And of course, my mind immediately goes to Midsummer. I'm like, that is a concoction.
That. Yep.
And straight up, it is. And they get tied up and kidnapped by this dude, and traps them. And this is.
I will say one thing that was like unintentionally hilarious. No, actually, I would say intentionally. Intentional here is just how much this poor man. Just gets the fucking shit kicked out of him. Like,
there's a running joke with what's his name? Michael? Martin, right. The main dude, the dude who's out there with the ranger, his name is Martin, her name is Alma, and he continuously gets hurt throughout the movie, and there's something about it where it is absolutely serious and plausible in the context of what's happening, and it doesn't break the flow, but there's like a running joke of him just getting more and more injured and not having any anesthetics, just like the horrible pain that he's going through. And so he stitches up his foot, and what I really appreciated about that scene is that it's not funny yet, but the portrayal of pain was really realistic.
Yeah.
One of the things that bugs me a lot about movies, a lot of the time, is that, someone will have a very serious injury, and their reaction to it will be like sucking air through their teeth is as bad as it gets, or like the tough guy will grimace and be like, that hurts. You're fishing a bullet out of me. That hurts. I'm in discomfort.
This is a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, right? It's not like if you've ever had anything stuck into you when you don't have anesthetic, like into a wound, you are full of nerve endings. Your pain threshold is one thing, but there's a lot of pain involved. And this dude had a huge gash on the bottom of his foot that he'd been walking on for a bit, and they have to get it stitched up. And his acting in that moment really feels like he's actually going through that level of pain. And I really appreciated that. Like, it's little details like that that I think I really enjoyed.
I will say this is a very, very small tangent.
Yeah.
There was a part, like, right before they run to Zach where Almost, like, stops Martin from walking.
Yeah.
And he's like, quiet. And there's a long pause, like, somebody's watching us. And in that moment, I wanted so badly for a fart to happen.
You and your farts.
I know,
Movies.
but the rules of 3 would have been great.
It would have been great.
Like, would have just dead silence, just...
But, no, it's very effective at having those moments of strangeness and just discomfort of something being wrong in the woods. There's a part a little later where they've already been drugged, they're tied up. This dude is like knocking them out and arranging them for weird photos that he's taking, and the idea is that there's this forest god or creature of some kind that he's trying to appease with these pictures he's taking, like creating art to try to connect with the god. And there's a point where I guess they've been there for a couple of days or something, and he's got them tied up, but he doesn't want them to die or anything. So he goes like, let me take a look at your foot, and he unwraps the foot, and there's like, it's a little gooey, and he's like, oh man, that's infected. So I can either take you to a hospital, which, it'll take too long. We're like 30 miles away from civilization. Or we're going to have to amputate. And he's like, no, I want to go to a hospital. And he's like, Jeremy, there's no time. Like, and it's weird because at no point in the conversation is he talking about how, like, he can't let them go.
Yeah, he speaks very candidly
about
it, which just kind of makes it weird. Like,
yeah.
That was one thing I will just, like, 100% worked for me.
Yeah, it was very surreal. And he goes to, like, he gets this axe, and he's like, all right, here we go. And then starts this weird little sequence where he is missing repeatedly, and each time you're like, and Martin's freaking out, and he's like, now see, that was your fault. And like, just, it's this weirdly hilarious moment. And then we actually this super dark scene.
And we just succeed, like, in actually cutting it off, and they have, like, this stunned silence.
Yeah.
And then he goes, half off. See? That was your fault. You fucking moved.
And it's still a moment where when it actually hits, you're like, ooh! Like, it looks... The gore in Ben Wheatley movies is really solid. It's rarely excessive. It's generally just really effective. Because, like, if your goal is just to, like, squig someone out with body horror or violence, you don't have to do the whole thing where it's just guts everywhere. You can literally just have, a close-up of an infected shot or something. And there are a few close-ups of some weird cuts and everything in this movie, but generally it's not excessive. So appreciate that.
I mean, it's like it keeps it fairly grounded, all things considered. Whether or not that's a good or bad thing is kind of up to you.
Yeah.
But it maintains that consistency throughout. So yeah, there's Zach, the weird man in the forest who does all these kind of fucked up things.
And then there's the escape sequence where, of course, they try to get away, which was I found myself surprisingly like on the edge of my seat for, because I did not know what was going to happen. I fully expected one of them to die during that sequence. I didn't know how much of the movie was left. Like, I didn't know, like, Alma could have gotten shot with the bow and arrow.
Well,
like, he could have gotten, Martin could have been caught very easily. And that whole sequence of them trying to get away, and it specifically focuses on Martin during this sequence, But that whole pursuit through the woods of just a crazy man with an axe shouting after you, tracking you through the woods, reminded me of like some parts of Outlast 2, like just it's a video game, but just this really tense feeling of this could get fucked any moment.
See,
and I appreciate that.
I thought it was a good sequence overall. One part I will fit was a little distracting to me is my mind kept going back to
Farting?
No, not farting.
You're very easy to track, Martin.
I was thinking, was it Daddy's Home?
Come to Daddy?
Come to Daddy, yeah. And I kept thinking of the guy who like had like the fucking pick stuck in his brain, and he pulls it out of I forget what he says, like "Durr" for dying.
He says Arthur.
Arthur was Arthur dying is like beforehand. Like Zach gets beamed by this like photo developer.
Oh yeah, when they're escaping, Alma just clocks him in the face with a light.
So he like clearly has a concussion, and he's missing all these bow shots, and he has like this part of his head just kind of peeling off a little bit.
You can see the skull, like it's a very serious hit, and he's just bleeding profusely.
And he's like, so he's like a little wobbly, and that's why I kept thinking it was like like he's gonna collapse, like those concussed days.
I mean, eventually he does.
He does, in a very what was actually a very like darkly funny sequence.
Yeah, it's. Another thing about this movie, I think, is that it does a very interesting job at making the visuals. Aside from like the really trippy shit where the stuff is, clearly, quickly edited and meant to pop in your face and just like freak you out, or not freak you out, but like trip you out. There's the other part of it where it's just the way that they utilized the strobe lights and the lighting in the woods, like with the flare and everything, like. I really enjoyed the visual style of those sequences.
Yeah, like
it was really interesting.
Yeah, like I said, the technical aspects and the visual elements are all like very, very well done.
Yeah.
I guess it's more just your mileage and how much that will take you. It varies. I would say, because like if you're watching strictly the visuals alone, then cool, you're gonna be good for a good time.
Yeah.
But for me, like this just did not feel like. Well, I mean, good time might be the wrong word.
No, it's. I don't know that it's. Visuals, I feel, is a little reductive of it. It is very much a sensory experience.
Okay, let me rephrase that.
There's a lot of stuff that comes together.
If you are there purely for the sensory experience of it,
yeah.
then you're in for a pretty good time. I feel like if you're looking at this for as a cohesive whole, however, I do feel like it's lacking in certain ways. That
I think it's cohesive. I just don't think it's as compelling or tight as it could be.
I felt like it was missing something. I don't put my finger on what exactly that is.
It definitely doesn't spell everything out for you.
It's not like it's not in terms of plot. It's not in terms of story.
Oh. So what do you mean by cohesion?
It's more just like, does it have all the pieces that make it feel like a complete and rewarding film experience? And to me, like I felt like it was lacking something in that area that, for me specifically, that for me. And I think for me it was the emotional component, and that there was something that just was not gripping me in that way that tied it all together. That made me that made the ending, as abrupt as it was, feels not necessarily satisfactory, but like I'm trying to find the right word. Climactic,
I suppose. I do feel like there was a decent horror element to the end. That's the thing. Like when it comes to Ben Wheatley movies, the climax isn't so much of a climax. It's just kind of like these pieces coming together for reveals. Like when she steps into that clean room and sees what's actually in there. Like it's really just this thing of like, oh shit, like just
yeah.
And when Zach shows back up, one of the other things that made me feel like it was definitely a supernatural thing with the woods was the way that the mushroom spores were focused on throughout the movie, and the way that the mist actually surrounded the camp when they tried to leave.
True. My defense against that was like they mentioned early on when like when they're walking through the forest, when they get past the abandoned tent, It's like, oh, we're standing in it right now, and they mention like how the force is almost like brain-like structure underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, if it's a brain, that implies consciousness.
Yeah.
And if you have some kind of consciousness, that would imply a scientific explanation as to why this consciousness that they want to communicate would be able to control these spores in that way.
Wait. So you're saying that there may have been a larger consciousness, but there was a scientific explanation for it?
If we're assuming like the roots and stuff like it work like a nervous system, and that would imply the brain system. A brain implies conscious thought, which would imply
conscious versus sentient.
I suppose you can make that argument.
Like there are definitely systems within nature where you talk about like, if you're talking about how forest systems work, you can talk about how certain kinds of trees, as they grow taller, their branches never touch each other. Or you can talk about how mushrooms work as an underground network of fungus that actually communicates with each other. Like, there's instances within nature. That's part of what I liked about this movie, was that it basically took... It's almost like science fiction in the way that it took science and pushed it a little further into like a weird fiction, where it instead pushed a little towards the occult side of things and with people who believed in some crazier, larger entity kind of style. And if it was something like what you're talking about when it comes to a brain, like it's less of a brain and more of a nerve network.
Well, you can make the argument that the standing stone, the seeing stone in this case would be like the central.
Standing stone, yeah.
What's it called, standing stone?
Yeah.
Okay, like serve as a central node that implies they explicitly say wants to communicate. Again, that implies consciousness. If you combine that with the idea of a central nervous system with the forest brain, and we assume that the standing stone is like the central node of that, we can also make the connection that this is like where the commands for all the forests kind of spring from.
Yeah.
In that way. So you can still make it like a scientific versus supernatural explanation with that in mind.
That's like saying there's a scientific explanation for science fiction concepts, though.
True, my point, like, again,
I'm saying that it's good that it has an explanation beyond, like, oh, it's ghosts, or some shit like that, or like, oh, it's a forest god. Like, instead of just going with something like that, it does have a more grounded, connected series of facts within the universe of the movie. Mm-hmm. The actual concept is still beyond real science.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like that, right. I'm not arguing that point.
Okay.
I'm
speaking, as long as we're on the same page with that. Like, no, I get what you mean.
I'm not implying this is based on reality.
Yeah, okay.
I'm more like based on the logic and the rules presented in the film.
Yeah.
That is where I'm basing all this on.
So the main thing that makes me feel that the entity is a real thing is the mist. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the biggest thing for me.
See, I can see that argument, but I can also still stand by my point, whereas it's like, if, again, in this movie's universe, if we're assuming, like, all the force or, like, the countrywide nervous system, as the movie implies, is centralized in this one particular area, then I can also assume that can also present the central command of, hey, release spores, surround them, because I want to talk to these people, therefore I'm standing up to do that thing. I can buy that.
It's like an interesting, good version of The Happening.
That is certainly a direction.
I mean, like, what we're talking about is you know, it's like if The Happening wasn't really fucking stupid and based around murder.
What? No.
What? Are you serious? Like, just fucking Marky Mark's over-earnest acting is the best.
They're gonna monologue about hot dogs, still kind of say.
Oh, God. So sad about the Lovely Bones. Yeah, okay. I think we're on the same page. We just, like, define it a little differently semantically. Yeah. But generally, I do believe that at the very end, it was a supernatural force that had essentially possessed Amma.
Well, you could go to your little forest hut and take all the fucking pictures. I'll be in my little science stuff over here, and we'll just meet in the middle somewhere.
All right, sure. But
just hide the bodies.
Not to mention that in the visions that they had before the ending, there were shots of that final shot.
Valid. Yeah.
So there's elements throughout. Anyway, like once you get to camp and everything, one of the things I really liked was just the trippy visuals. They did a really interesting, unique take on trippy visuals in a movie. And there was definitely points in the movie where it's like just weird 80s synth music and just like crazy shit that you're looking at, and you know, like Enter the Void, but without giving you a headache, like, and traumatizing you.
Have I seen Enter the Void?
I've got it.
I don't know if I'm up for that ride tonight.
You want to watch a 3-hour movie that is absolutely raw and merciless with your emotions?
I think I'm good.
All right, fine.
I'm in a sensitive place right now. I don't need that in my life. Thank you.
Well, just the continued because there's a moment.
We're another pair, aren't we?
There's a moment where they arrive at the science camp after they get away from Zach, and like the lady who's there goes to look at Martin's foot, and she's like, "Oh, that needs to be cauterized," and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Don't you have like anything I could bite down on or an anesthetic?" And she's like, "No, okay, here's a towel to bite down on," and when she goes to heat up the little instrument that she has to cauterize his toes,
the sound design
so
really
loud.
blasts, like blowtorch.
They turn up the sound of the blowtorch so much. It's so good. And
he just like look a shitty terror on his
know,
face, like, oh no.
It's pretty funny.
And he just immediately just passes out. And it's like,
it's pretty funny.
Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable.
Not to mention Zach's death. Zach's death was really funny. I love that. Just he has an injury and it's a really bad one, and to the point where he's not able to think clearly. And he's like, "Oh, hang on, maybe I can." Oh, nope. No, you need to take me to the hospital. Just in the middle of this genuinely harrowing sequence, where the characters are fighting for their lives, just this weird moment of comedy as this character fucking dies, and it's I don't know, it worked for me. It was pretty great. Yeah. So it's unique, it's interesting. I don't know if I'd watch it again.
Yeah, like if I were to like rate this, I'd give it a solid 7 for me.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'd actually probably still like give it around the same. Like I would give it like a 7.5.
Yeah,
maybe an 8. I can see how some people might put this up at a 9, depending on your taste for this kind of thing. But generally,
I can respect it on its artistic merits.
Yeah, I can respect it on its artistic merits. If you're simply looking to have an experience with a movie, then this will fit that bill nicely. But if you're looking for something that you'll come back to over and over again, it's kind of a horror movie, but not really.
Like, it's got horror elements.
It's got horror elements.
It's definitely got horror cinematography.
Yeah, but you know, and the sequences in the woods.
I put it closer to a thriller, maybe.
Yeah, definitely a thriller, but definitely has like those horror gross out things with the wounds and stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, overall, not bad. Definitely enjoyed it. I'm glad we saw it in theaters, because that's one thing. If you do want to give this a shot, definitely see it in theaters, because that whole audio sensory experience is, unless you have a gigantic screen at home and a sound system that you can blast, you're going to miss out on the experience of being able to watch this on a huge screen and get the sounds hitting you.
For sure.
So, definitely enjoyed that.
So I think on movies we have Thunder Force and Concrete Cowboy, or like 2 other like Netflix movies we gotta watch, and then Mortal Kombat comes out next week.
I like that segue, just like, all right, we're done talking about this. Like, just
I got nothing else to say. So
all right, we're good. So,
look out for those videos. I don't know.
Sure, like and subscribe if you like, and subscribe us.
Do that thing.
Do the thing.
End.
Bye.